My mother-in-law stood on a stage in front of 200 people and called me a parasite. She thought she was destroying my reputation. She didn't know she was signing her own eviction notice. My name is Maya Sterling, and I'm 31 years old. 3 weeks ago, I stood in the center of a ballroom at the Grand Copley in Boston, wearing a gown that cost more than my first car. Surrounding me were the city's most influential judges, lawyers, and socialites. My mother-in-law, Beatrice Sterling, took the microphone, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Julian deserves a woman of pedigree, not a girl who grew up in a trailer. Maya is an opportunistic parasite, and this wedding is a farce." The room went completely silent. I could see my own parents in the back row, their faces pale with humiliation. Julian, my husband of exactly 12 minutes, reached for the mic, his hand shaking with rage. But I touched his arm and whispered one word. "Wait." Beatrice thought she delivered the final blow. She thought she was putting the nameless girl in her place. What she didn't know was that I had spent 6 months preparing for this exact moment. I wasn't just a designer. I was the woman holding the deeds to every property she called her own, and the evidence of the $1.4 million she had stolen from Julian's trust to fund her own lifestyle. Before I tell you how I turned Beatrice Sterling's perfect world into a pile of ash in under 5 minutes, take a moment to like and subscribe if you believe justice should be served. Let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from right now? I read every single one of your stories, and knowing I'm not alone means the world to me. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to the day I realized that in the Sterling family, I was never a daughter-in-law. I was a project that Beatrice intended to fail. To understand Beatrice, you have to understand the Sterling name. They were old money Connecticut, the kind of family that has a wing in a hospital named after them and thinks budget is a word for people who don't have personal assistants. My father-in-law, Richard, was a retired judge, and Beatrice was the queen of the Fairfield social circuit. Julian was their only son. He was brilliant, a civil rights attorney who actually cared about people, which made him the black sheep of a family that only cared about portfolios. When I met him, I was a freelance graphic designer working out of a studio apartment in Somerville. I didn't care about his money, and he didn't care about my lack of it. But Beatrice? Beatrice cared about nothing else. The first time I met her was at a Sunday dinner at their Tudor-style mansion in Fairfield. I brought a bouquet of dahlias I had grown in my window box. I'm a landscape architect by training, and plants are my language. I handed them to her with a smile. She looked at the flowers like they were covered in dirt. "Oh, how quaint," she said, handed them to the maid without a second glance and said, "Maya dear, please use the side entrance next time. The front door is for family." That was the pattern. For 3 years I was the help. At Thanksgiving, I was expected to arrive at 6 a.m. to help the caterers, while Julian's sister, Vanessa, was treated like a visiting dignitary. Vanessa was a fashion consultant, which meant she spent Beatrice's money on designer bags and called it research. I remember one specific night about a year ago. We were all at the dining table, gleaming with Wedgwood china. Beatrice was talking about the Sterling legacy. "Vanessa is a visionary," she beamed. "She's the future of this family's social standing." Then her eyes found me. "And Maya?" "Well, Maya's very good at arranging the napkins, aren't you, dear?" The table laughed. Not a cruel, loud laugh, but that polite, tinkling laugh of people who think they are inherently better than you. Julian gripped my hand under the table, but I just smiled. I had learned early that in this house, complaining made you dramatic and sensitive. So I became small. I became quiet. I became invisible. But invisibility has one major advantage. People forget you're in the room. And when people forget you're there, they start to talk. The breaking point happened 6 months before the wedding. Julian's grandmother, Eleanor, the real architect of the Sterling fortune, had passed away a year prior. She was the only one who ever saw me. She used to call me every Sunday and say, "Maya, you see the patterns others miss. Don't let them dim your light." After she died, Beatrice took over as the manager of the family estate. Julian was supposed to receive his full inheritance, nearly $3 million, on our wedding day. One afternoon, I was at the Sterling house helping Beatrice organize archival photos for the wedding slideshow. Another task I was given to feel useful. Beatrice was in the study with Vanessa, thinking I was in the basement. "Don't worry about the money, Vanessa. I heard Beatrice's voice through the vents. I've already moved $400,000 from Julian's trust into your business account. He won't check until after the wedding, and by then, the mortgage on the Aspen house will be cleared. But what if that designer girl sees the statements? Vanessa whispered. Beatrice laughed. Maya? She can barely read a balance sheet. She's too busy playing with her plants. She's a placeholder, Vanessa. Once the wedding photos are done and the reputation is sealed, we'll find a way to get her out of the picture. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just that she hated me. She was robbing her own son to fund her daughter's failures, and she was using our wedding as a shield. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I sat in that basement and realized that Grandma Eleanor had left me more than just memories. 2 weeks before she passed, she had handed me a small mahogany box with brass hinges. Keep this safe, Maya, she had whispered. When Beatrice shows you exactly who she is, you'll know what to do. I had never opened it. I was too afraid it was just a mother's attempt to comfort a daughter-in-law she knew would be mistreated. But that night I drove home, pulled the box from my closet, and opened it. Inside was a USB drive and a legal document dated 5 years ago. It was a deed transfer. It turned out the Sterling estate Beatrice bragged about, the Fairfield mansion, the Aspen house, the apartment in New York, had never been Richard's or Beatrice's. Eleanor had purchased them all with her own family's inheritance before she married Julian's grandfather. And the document in my hand? It was an irrevocable trust. It stated that upon Eleanor's death, the ownership of the properties didn't go to her son, Richard. It transferred directly to the named beneficiary. I scanned the page, my eyes blurring as the letters rearranged themselves. Beneficiary. Maya and Sterling. I wasn't just Julian's wife. I was Beatrice's landlord. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to pressure you, or make you feel like you had no right to what was fair? That feeling of specific helplessness, it stays with you. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment. I read every single one, I promise. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now might be the time, because what happened next at that wedding, it changed everything. I didn't tell Julian. Not yet. I knew if he found out, he would confront her immediately, and Beatrice would find a way to spin it. She was a master of audience management. She would tell the social circle that I had manipulated a senile old woman. I needed her to expose herself. I needed a stage. I hired a lawyer named Marcus Webb, Julian's childhood friend who Beatrice had always dismissed because his father was a mechanic. Marcus was a shark in a charcoal suit. We spent 4 months quietly documenting the $1.4 million in unauthorized transfers Beatrice had made from Julian's trust. We gathered the forensic reports on the signature she had forged on Eleanor's other will, the fake one she had used to stay in the house. The wedding arrived. March 15th. A stormy night in Boston. Beatrice was in her element. She had spent $150,000 of Julian's money on the event. Money she thought she was effectively stealing back from me. She wore a champagne-colored silk gown and air-kissed the guests, telling everyone how brave she was for welcoming a girl from my background into the family. The sabotages started early. My dress was accidentally stained with red wine by Vanessa in the bridal suite. The flowers I had meticulously chosen were replaced with cheap carnations because there was a shipping error. "Don't be sensitive, Maya," Beatrice whispered as she adjusted my veil. "It's a wedding, not a botanic garden. Just try to look presentable." I just smiled. "Thank you for the reminder, Beatrice. I'll remember this." During the reception, the MC called Beatrice to the stage for the traditional, "Welcome to the family" toast. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She had a set of notes typed and rehearsed. She began with the insults I told you about. She called me unwanted. She called me a used product. She told the 200 guests that I had manipulated Julian into this marriage. Beside her, my father-in-law, Richard, covered his mouth to hide a smirk. Vanessa giggled into her champagne. Julian stood up, his face white with shock. "Mother, that's enough." Beatrice just smiled that cold reptilian smile. "Oh, Julian, someone has to tell the truth. If you won't protect this family's reputation, I will." She looked at me, expecting me to run out in tears. That's what the small, quiet Maya would have done. Instead, I stood up. I didn't run. I walked toward the stage with measured steps, my heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. I took the microphone from her hand. She was so surprised she actually let me. "Thank you, Beatrice," I said, my voice carrying clear and steady across the ballroom. "I'm so glad you brought up the sterling reputation. Because reputation is based on truth, isn't it?" I signaled to the tech booth. The massive screen behind us, which was supposed to show a montage of Sterling family memories, flickered to life. But it wasn't photos of Julian as a child. The first slide was a bank statement. A transfer of $400,000 from Julian's trust to a shell company owned by Vanessa Sterling. The room gasped. I saw Tyler Caldwell's father, a managing partner at a major firm, lean forward, his eyes narrowing. "This," I said, pointing to the screen, "is the Sterling family support Beatrice mentioned. It's called embezzlement." I clicked the remote. The next slide was a forensic handwriting report. "And this," I continued, "is the signature on Grandma Eleanor's 2020 deed transfer. According to Forensic Document Services, there is a 98.7% probability that this signature was forged by Beatrice Sterling, while Eleanor was in the hospital with a broken hip." Beatrice's face went from white to a mottled raw steak color. "This is fake. You're lying. You're unstable." "I'm an auditor, Beatrice," I said quietly. "I don't play with pretend. I brought the receipts." The final slide appeared. It was the deed to the Sterling mansion in Fairfield. My name was at the bottom as the legal owner. "You said I didn't belong in this family," I said, looking her in the eye in front of every person she had ever tried to impress. "But the truth is, you've been living in my house for a year. You've been spending my husband's inheritance. And you've been doing it all while calling me a nuisance." I turned to the crowd. Beatrice Sterling wanted to protect her reputation tonight. I'm just helping her make sure it's an honest one. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Marcus Webb walked into the ballroom, briefcase in hand. "Mrs. Sterling," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of a courtroom verdict, "I'm here to serve you with a formal petition to return the $1.4 million in dispersed funds and a notice of eviction for the Fairfield property. You have 30 days. Beatrice actually staggered back a step, her hand flying to her throat. Vanessa burst into real messy tears, not the pretty kind. Richard stood up and walked toward the exit without saying a word to his wife. I handed the microphone back to Beatrice. "I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening," I said softly. "The bar is still open." The fallout was swifter than I could have imagined. By midnight, the live stream clip of the reception had been shared through every social circle in Connecticut. By morning, the Sterling name was synonymous with fraud, not philanthropy. Beatrice tried to spin it, of course. She posted a long, dramatic status about ungrateful children and modern families who don't understand loyalty. But the comments were brutal. "We saw the video, Beatrice. Own your mistake." Richard moved into a hotel 2 days later. He sent Julian a letter apologizing, not for the money, but for keeping his own comfort instead of standing up to Beatrice for 30 years. Vanessa lost her consulting contracts within a week. Turns out, when people realize your business is funded by theft from your brother, they don't want to be associated with you. Last I heard, she's living in a small apartment in Bridgeport, trying to find a real job for the first time in her life. As for the Fairfield mansion, I didn't sell it. I renovated it. I tore out the stuffy mahogany study and turned it into a design studio for my firm. I invited my own parents to move into the guest wing. The same parents Beatrice told to use the side entrance. Now they use the front door every single day. Julian and I are happy. Truly happy. We realize that setting a boundary isn't revenge. It's survival. It's choosing yourself when no one else will. I'm sitting in my new office now, looking out at the gardens I finally have the freedom to grow. On my desk is a photo of Grandma Eleanor. Sometimes I look at her and think, you knew, didn't you? You knew I had the steal. If you're watching this and you've been the scapegoat, if you've been told you're not enough or that your worth is determined by someone else's opinion, I want you to know something. They are wrong. They were always wrong. Your worth isn't a number on a check or a place on a guest list. It exists whether or not they acknowledge it. You have the right to build your own table. You have the right to walk away from people who only see you as free help or a nuisance. And sometimes the best way to protect your reputation is to let the truth speak for itself. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If my story touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set a boundary with family that felt like a betrayal but gave you your life back? Share your experience in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, you deserve to be chosen first. Take care of yourself.